Hey there, and welcome to your deep dive on navigating the digital transformation maze in HR. We're really dissecting Tamer El-Tonsy's report, HR Digital Transformation Paradoxes, and he hasn't just skimmed the surface. He plunges right into the tricky spots, where HR has to make these tough choices. And I think get ready to explore how companies are handling these challenges because I don't know about you, but it seems like everyone's kind of touched by this stuff in some way.
Oh, absolutely. What I find so fascinating is that El-Tonsy goes beyond just presenting the paradoxes, like you said. He gives real-world examples of companies, like you mentioned, IBM and others who are right there grappling with these issues head on. And he offers some really actionable insights.
Yeah.
Not just for HR professionals, but also for leaders.
Totally. It's one thing to talk about global strategy versus, that need for regional autonomy.
Right.
But when you see how a company with operations in, I think it was 44 countries, manages that whole balance, it's like, whoa, okay, this is real. You can't just have a cookie cutter approach to HR in today's world, can you?
Absolutely not. And El-Tonsy highlights this really compelling case study. It's an IT services company, and they use this hybrid model, which I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
So they set these overarching global objectives, but they also empower their regional HR teams to tailor initiatives to their specific context.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, you might see custom design programs in India for gender diversity and inclusion. That might look very different from what they're doing in their European markets.
That makes so much sense, though, right? Because it's like you have those core values and strategies, but you're acknowledging that different regions have unique needs and priorities. How do they make sure that things don't become chaotic with so much variation?
That's where data analytics come in.
Okay.
El-Tonsy really emphasizes how crucial data is to make sure that those local adaptations don't end up compromising the overall consistency. He even talks about platforms, like Oracle and Workday.
Oh, yeah, those are music to an HR professional's ears.
Right, exactly. And these platforms allow for that kind of, granular tracking and analysis of all these HR initiatives across all these different regions. So it's not just about saying, okay, go do your own thing. It's about, really being able to track and demonstrate the effectiveness of those localized approaches.
It's like having that bird's eye view of your global HR landscape.
Exactly.
You can see, okay, this is working, this isn't. Let's make adjustments, and you can do it in real time. Speaking of adjustments, let's talk about this pressure to prepare for the future of work.
Yes.
AI automation, the whole 9 yards. While still keeping things running smoothly, like right now in the present.
Right.
It's this constant balancing act, and I feel like so many companies are grappling with this. How do you do it all?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And El-Tonsy doesn't shy away from that. He brings up a really good example with IBM.
Okay.
Their major shift from hardware to cloud services and AI.
Wow.
That requires a massive reskilling effort from their HR team. You think about it. A company that big, that's a learning curve.
That's a really vivid example, though, and I think it highlights how important transparency and communication are during these transitions. You can't just expect employees to adapt overnight, without understanding the why behind all of these changes. So how did IBM handle that?
Well, they had to make some very, very difficult decisions, including letting some employees go to free up resources for these new areas.
Yeah.
As difficult as those decisions are, it really emphasizes El-Tonsy's point about transparency. You have to be upfront with leadership about the trade-offs that come with trying to balance current demands with future-proofing the workforce.
It's about acknowledging that there are going to be some growing pains and being honest about what those growing pains might look like. It's not all doom and gloom, though, is it?
No, not at all.
El-Tonsy talks about some really creative solutions that companies are using.
He does. He highlights companies turning to platforms like Oracle Learning and Docebo to kind of upskill their workforce in a more incremental way.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not like pulling them out of the work and putting them in a classroom group. It's about, allowing those employees to learn new skills, but at their own pace, they can integrate it into their existing workflow rather than disrupting it entirely.
That's a fantastic point because it's not this massive upheaval. It's just making learning and development a continuous process, something that's just woven into the fabric of their workday.
Exactly.
Okay, so now onto a paradox that I think we can all relate to.
Okay.
Regardless of what industry we're in, managing the human side of this. You've got your senior leaders who are all gung-ho about digital transformation.
Right. And then you have employees, some of whom, may have been with a company for years, who are resistant to these changes.
Yeah.
They're worried about their jobs. They might be overwhelmed with how fast things are changing. It's a very real concern.
It's understandable, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Change can be unsettling, especially in the workplace. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you get everyone on board with these sometimes like radical shifts?
Well, El-Tonsy talks a lot about the importance of empathy and communication, and I think that's key here.
That sounds so simple.
It does, but it's about really truly understanding those fears and concerns that employees have and addressing them head on. He actually gives this great example of a conglomerate in Egypt that really struggled with this. And what they realized is they were so focused on the what, we're implementing this new software, we're making these process changes, that they forgot about the why.
Interesting.
So they shifted their focus and they really started focusing on explaining to employees why these changes were happening and how it would ultimately benefit them. Instead of just throwing this new software at their employees.
Right, like, hey, figure it out.
Exactly. They created these programs to slowly introduce the digital tools, and they really focused on showcasing the practical benefits in their day-to-day work.
So it's about demonstrating how these changes are actually going to make their lives easier, make their work more efficient, not just add another layer of complexity.
Yes, exactly. It's about showing the value, right? Not just dictating the change. El-Tonsy also suggests things like engagement surveys, focus groups, to really listen to the concerns of your employees and be ready to adapt your approach based on that feedback. He even talks about reverse mentoring.
Oh, that's interesting. I've heard about that.
Yeah, like pairing a tech-savvy, Gen Z employee with a more senior member of the team.
Oh, that's brilliant.
To kind of help them navigate these new tools.
So not only are you like bridging the digital divide, but you're also fostering this culture of learning and collaboration across generations.
Exactly.
The younger employee feels valued for their expertise. The senior employee feels supported and adapting to these new tools. It's like a win-win.
It is a win-win. It's a great example of how HR can really facilitate those connections and create a more inclusive environment for digital transformation.
Okay, so ready for the final paradox that El-Tonsy presents?
Yeah.
This one really made me think because it's like, on one hand, you need to communicate your digital transformation strategy clearly to everyone in the company.
Right. You need that roadmap.
But what happens when technology is evolving so rapidly that your roadmap basically needs a roadmap?
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly.
Which is really difficult. And that's where El-Tonsy talks about agility and adaptability being absolutely essential. He uses this example of a client who was transitioning to a digital-first retail model.
Okay.
And they realized that they couldn't promise a fixed destination because the landscape was just changing too quickly. So instead of saying, okay, this is exactly where we're going to be in 5 years, they focused on communicating those short-term milestones and being transparent about the fact that their long-term vision might shift along the way.
That must have been challenging for them to navigate as a company, but it makes sense because you're acknowledging that the path might not be linear.
Right.
And that's okay.
It's about being flexible and adaptable.
Yeah.
How did employees handle that, though?
Yeah, because that could cause a lot of anxiety for people, I would think.
You would think so, but it actually worked in their favor.
Yeah.
Because they were constantly kept in the loop, they felt more engaged and informed, even amidst all that uncertainty. And I think that actually ties back into the previous paradox about bringing everyone along.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because if you're constantly learning and adapting as an organization, you're creating a culture where change isn't this scary thing. It's a positive thing. It's something to embrace rather than fear.
It's a complete mindset shift.
It is.
It's not about resisting change. It's about building a culture that embraces change and actually sees it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And that requires this commitment to continuous learning and development, which, El-Tonsy gives some great resources for LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, ADX. There's so many options out there now for employees to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
There are. And I love that he includes those because it really highlights how accessible continuous learning has become these days. It's no longer just about these formal training programs that you might have to, take a week off work to attend or something. It's about empowering employees to take ownership of their development and seek out those learning opportunities that really align with their interests and their career goals.
It's about fostering that inherent curiosity and that desire to learn, which I think is so important, especially in today's world where things are changing so quickly. So we've covered a lot of ground here, everything from global strategies to navigating employee anxieties about change. If you had to pick like one big thing that stood out to you from El-Tonsy's report, what would it be?
For me, it really boils down to his emphasis on the human element throughout all of this. It's so easy to get caught up in the technology, the tools, the
It
platforms.
goes to shiny objects.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, digital transformation is about people. It's about empowering your workforce to thrive in this world that's changing so rapidly. And that requires this deep understanding of human behavior motivation and the importance of creating a culture that supports both.
I completely agree. You can't have one without the other. You can't just focus on the technology without thinking about the human impact and vice versa. It's about finding that balance. It's like that saying, the only constant is change, right? And in HR, if you can help your organization not just survive, but really thrive in this environment that's constantly digitally evolving, you become such a valuable strategic partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You become the architect of a resilient and adaptable workforce, which is, that's essential in today's world.
It really is. And El-Tonsy's report had so many insightful takeaways about navigating these paradoxes. Was there one that really resonated with you?
You know what really struck me was when he said that navigating these paradoxes isn't about finding that perfect middle ground.
Okay.
Because it's constantly shifting.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's more about being agile and adaptable in your approaches so that you can move with that shift.
It's like walking a tightrope, right? You're constantly having to adjust your balance to stay upright.
Exactly. And that takes, staying informed, challenging your own assumptions, and being willing to adjust course when you need to. It's definitely not easy.
It sounds like a lot.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's so essential for success in today's world.
It makes you realize that this deep dive was really just the tip of the iceberg.
It is.
When it comes to HR's role in all of this digital transformation, there's so much more to uncover.
There is. And the exciting thing is we're all kind of learning and evolving together in real time.
That's true.
Every time there's a successful initiative, every time we overcome a challenge, it all adds to our collective understanding of how to do this better.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer scale of digital transformation in HR, you're not alone. We're all figuring this out as we go. And I think El-Tonsy's report gives us a really great framework for thinking about these challenges in a new way, and then some practical strategies to actually address them.
It does. And if you can just embrace the idea that there isn't one right answer, these paradoxes, they need that constant navigation and adaptation that we were talking about. But if you can do that, you'll be in a much better place to really lead your organization through this exciting but sometimes challenging time.
That is a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for diving into these HR paradoxes with us today.
My pleasure.
Now we want to hear from you. Which paradox really resonated with your own experiences? Let us know. What strategies have you found helpful? Join the conversation.